Greetings, everyone. This is the Gardening Snail of Livingston, California, just trying to keep the community informed with a little historical perspective along the way. In this video, we will be going over the September 19th, 2023 City Council meeting agenda packet and touching on how legal fees increased exponentially since July 2021. City Council special and regular meeting September 19th, 2023. Special meeting set to run from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Regular meeting scheduled to open at 7 p.m. You can participate in the meeting via teleconference by calling 520-525-8911. Additionally, the regular meeting will be streamed on YouTube Live. Public comments can be submitted via email at citycouncil@livingstoncity.com. Comments must be received by 2 p.m. on the day of the City Council meeting in order for them to be distributed to the Council prior to consideration of the matter. You will need to provide meeting date, item number, name, email, and comment. Please limit to 300 words or 3 minutes, and please include public comment in the subject for the email. Written comments will not be read aloud at the meeting, but will be reported as received for the record. If you do not receive an acknowledgement of receipt by 4 p.m., please call the City Clerk's office at 209-394-8041, extension 121. Note, this technology is not a guaranteed method. Closed session, call to order, roll call, pledge of allegiance, moment of silence, and then citizen comments. Closed session. Any public comment on closed session items will be taken before the closed session. Any required announcements or discussion of closed session items or actions following the closed session will be made in the City Council chambers. On the agenda, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, 2 matters. Regular meeting. After the Pledge of Allegiance, moment of silence, roll call, closed session announcements, and changes to the agenda is citizens' comments. This section of the agenda allows members of the public to address the City Council on any item not on the agenda and items on the agenda. Comments are usually limited to 3 minutes. Up next, awards, presentations, and proclamations. First is a presentation by Trane Energy Services Company on their project updates. Next, a proclamation recognizing the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation, followed by announcements and reports. Here's some of the who's who on commissions and boards, and more. Gurpal Samra and Jose Moran's commissions and boards. Consent agenda. Items on the consent calendar are considered routine or non-controversial and will be enacted by one vote unless separate action is requested by the city manager or city council member. Items number 2 and 3 are routine and fairly standard. There are a whole lot of meeting minutes on this consent calendar, and more meeting minutes, and even more meeting minutes, followed by a resolution awarding a contract for a slurry seals project. Item number 18 is about executing an agreement to develop a long-term fiscal model and provide sales tax and property tax analysis. I'm guessing in preparation to get into some serious negotiations with the county about a tax sharing agreement. Item number 19 is about executing an agreement with Liebert Cassidy Whitmore for specialized legal services. Side note, if I'm remembering correctly, Liebert Cassidy Whitmore was the legal firm that handled legal issues or legal questions for the police department for many years. And discussion and potential action items, item number 20, approving a contract with F&M Bank for banking services or alternative council direction, followed by council direction on future agenda items, and adjournment. Here's a staff report about awarding a contract in the amount of $368,648 to apply slurry seal and replacing pavement striping and markings on various streets in the city of Livingston. This will be funded using Measure V and/or SB1 funds. Next is the contract with Baker Tilly. Let's get into a little bit about why the city wants to contract and pay someone for sales tax and property tax analysis. First, a little background on Proposition 13, which essentially capped the amount of property taxes to 1% of assessed value for all local governments. Prior to the passage of Proposition 13, property taxes were based on the market value of the property, that is, the price for which it could be sold, which could really put some people in a world of hurt if they had bought their home with the idea of living in it for the rest of their life, and ended up having their property taxes ratcheted up just because property values happened to go up in the neighborhood around them. Some of us who came of age during the 70s can remember stories of people being forced out of their homes because they could not afford to pay the property taxes on their home. Property taxes that went up, not because of something they did, for example, improvements on the home, but because of how much their neighbors sold their houses for. Under Proposition 13, property taxes are based on a property's purchase price. In each year after a purchase, the property's taxable value for property tax purposes increases by 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower. This process continues until the property is sold and again is taxed at its purchase price. I'm going to skip this paragraph, but I would suggest you pause to read it. What I'm going to do is skip down to the next paragraph and point out that the California legislature added Section 99 to the California Revenue and Taxation Code, which requires a city seeking to annex property to its incorporated territory and a county affected by such annexation to have in place a property tax sharing agreement before annexation can occur. And currently, the city of Livingston does not have a tax sharing agreement in place with Merced County. There was one once upon a time. On September 21st, 2004, the Merced County Board of Supervisors adopted a master property tax sharing agreement with the city of Livingston, but canceled it on July 1st, 2009, because the 2025 Livingston General Plan set a policy direction for the future growth of the city of Livingston that was fundamentally in conflict with the county general plan. That's putting it mildly. The 2025 Livingston General Plan update had population figures so huge that even our own Planning Commission at the time recommended to not approve it. I can remember population numbers of anywhere between 110,000 to 150,000, depending on what document you were looking at. Back to the staff report. Until a new agreement is in place, no unincorporated County of Merced territory can be added to the city of Livingston. In order to ensure a new property tax sharing agreement is equitable, it is important for policymakers to understand the various trade-offs inherent in property tax and other tax sharing arrangements, which may be discussed in connection with annexation proposals. And an understanding of the city's basic financial circumstances, both with and without annexation. Translation: we don't want to end up giving a lot to only get back a little. It is also important for the community to understand and be supportive of an agreement that is not one size fits all, but that is fair for the city of Livingston. Translation: we're not Merced. We're not Atwater. We're not any other municipality in the county of Merced. So just because they agreed to something doesn't mean we should have to agree to the exact same terms. You can read the last paragraph at your leisure. In my view, it's like a polite way of saying we are in a mess, it's complicated, and we need an expert to help make sure we don't get screwed over in the process. And because of what's at stake, it's worth spending the $50,000 out of the Economic Opportunity Fund to get it done. Moving on to the agreement with Liebert Cassidy Whitmore. Having looked at a lot of warrant registers over many years, I tend to associate Liebert Cassidy Whitmore with the police department. although the name of the firm might have been just plain Liebert Cassidy back in the day. Anyway, due to a number of personnel matters, including investigations and disciplinary matters, the city requires specialized and expert advice on public sector employment law. The proposed agreement will cover representations relative to disciplinary actions, administrative proceedings, litigation, and items that may go before the Public Employment Relations Board. Liebert Cassidy Whitmore is currently being used for legal advice and representation in numerous personnel and employment matters, including advice and representation in disciplinary and personnel policy matters. On a go-forward basis, matters will be assigned to them upon consultation with the city manager and city attorney. Funding and budget for employment and personnel-related legal services are included in the annual operating budget. So let's take a look at an example from the budget, shall we? I am looking at a section related to the General Fund Administrative Services. Normally, in the past, I have found legal fees either ending up in account number 4300 Professional Services or 4330 Contracted Services Legal. I found legal bills in both of these. Here you can see the actual numbers for fiscal year 2020-2021, which ended on June 30th, 2021. And how these numbers quadrupled in the fiscal year that followed, that began on July 1st, 2021 and ended on June 30th, 2022. This is what they were predicted to be during the fiscal year that ended just this last June, and amounts being budgeted for the fiscal year we are now in. Note that this is just General Fund Administrative Services. It does not include the amounts budgeted for the police department or public works or any other sector of the city. When you look at the numbers, professional services is expected to be 10 times higher than it was in 2021. And contracted services legal is expected to be almost 4 times higher than it was in fiscal year 2021. If you've been following this channel on a regular basis, you already have a pretty good idea of what set off the explosion in legal fees beginning in July of 2021. Moving on to approving a contract with F&M Bank. F&M Bank has been providing banking services to the city of Livingston since 2019. At the May 15, 2023 City Council meeting, City Council directed staff to cancel the current agreement with F&M and notify them of the desire to terminate the contract effective November 11, 2023. City staff was further directed to send out a request for proposal. A request for proposal was posted May of 2023 and also sent to several different banks. 3 responded: Bank of the West, F&M Bank, and West America Bank. The written responses were reviewed and interviews with banking personnel were conducted. The recommendation was to award the contract to F&M Bank. Under fiscal impact, banking service costs are offset by earnings on compensating balances. If you like what I do here, please follow me on Facebook and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember, editorial content is my own as a long-term resident of Livingston and does not represent the views and opinions of the City Council or the City of Livingston itself, and does not hold itself out to be any kind of legal advice.